start the recording now. Okay, it started. So welcome everybody to the seminar session, which is a STEM student panel that is focused on research experience. We have a lot of great panelists here today. They're both folks who did attend CSU, who didn't attend CSU, a variety of STEM fields, and they're just going to talk a little bit about their current research experience or past research experience with us today. So I will go over some panel engagement. So for panel engagement, really minimal. If you're comfortable, please unmute yourself and ask questions and engage with conversations. We want this to be more of a conversation and talking versus just like talking at you. So please unmute yourself when you want to ask a question. We definitely welcome folks to turn on their cameras. I do want to be mindful that this is recorded, so it's totally okay if you're not comfortable, but please turn on your video if you are comfortable to help with engaging a little bit. Engage as comfortably as you are, so definitely utilize those Zoom functions. Raise your hand, use the reactions chat box, and renaming yourself if you don't have your name on there already. So just doing what you always do and how you're comfortable interacting with Zoom. And the most important thing, I think, is making connections in the space, because we don't have a lot of spaces where we have awesome panelists talking about different things. So definitely leverage the space and utilize it as best as you're comfortable. For the flow today, each of the panelists prepared a little introductory slide to introduce themselves. They'll go through their name, pronouns, educational history, and a little bit about the research they're currently working on or have already worked on. And each of them will introduce themselves, and then we'll dive into some questions. And each panelist will answer the same set of questions that we've asked them to come prepared for, which is about 4. And once the panelist has talked through those 4 questions, we'll invite you to ask questions to that specific panelist, and we'll do that for each of them until we're all through with them answering those 4 questions, and then we'll open it up to questions for all of them. So let's get started. We're gonna start with Reed for an introduction.
Reed, you're muted.
That happens so often to me. It's terrible. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Reed Featherstone. He, him, his. I'm currently attending Colorado State University. I'll be graduating in May with a degree in civil engineering. I had the opportunity to focus some of my research on public infrastructure and the role it plays in facilitating the movement of infectious diseases in Merida, Mexico. And then later on, I transferred over into looking at how infrastructure moved pollutants in stormwater infrastructure.
Thanks, Reed. And then I invite Miguel to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello. My name is Miguel. Pronouns are he, him, his. Am I not muted? Okay, I'm good. So I graduated from Colorado State University in 2020. The Bachelor's of Computer Science, concentration in human-centered computing. So the research area my research area was augmented and virtual reality. So I worked with, I'll answer it more because from the questions, but I worked with robotics and like connecting it with a headset. It was intended to be like a way for us to, in case of disaster, so sending out the robot and then be able to control it with the headset. So that was mainly what I focused on. Also like a mobile application with augmented reality. So yeah.
Thank you, Miguel. I invite Augusta.
Hi, my name is Augusta. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Graduated from Colorado State University in December with a degree in Applied Computing Technology, which is a computer science and business degree. My research that I did, I participated in murals twice. The one that I won murals for was about modeling gentrification rates, because that was something that was important to me. And I wanted to know, how could we use census data to like make a more informed decision about the communities that we live in?
Thank you. And finally, Uche.
Hello, everyone. My name is Uche Agwu. Pronouns are he, him, his. For undergrad, I went to Santa Clara University, got my BS in mechanical engineering, and then I did my master's in mechanical engineering at Carnegie Mellon, and now I'm doing my PhD at Carnegie Mellon as well. So my research focuses on a couple things. So it's primarily first looking at lattice structure generation, which is sort of seen in that middle image that you see there, and then just trying to determine how we can apply it to different aerospace parts. And so one aspect was some past work was a jet engine bracket, and another part is a component on like a launch stack of a spacecraft, which is known as a payload adapter. And I just look at analyzing them and then also looking into ways of how to like manufacture them through additive manufacturing. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. And now we're going to head back to Reed to answer these 4 questions. And once he's done answering these questions, we'll take a few questions for Reed. I'm going to make my screen a little bit smaller so I can type questions for once we get to that part. But take it away, Reed.
Awesome. Thanks, Nicolette. So currently, I'm not working on any formal research. Although I am paired with a professor currently, as I'm interested in how teams work and how to create the best operating group or system for a group of people so that we can achieve the most with the least amount of friction. But that's, as I said, it was not formal. But in the past, I've worked on, as I said earlier, parasites and how they move through public infrastructure in Merida, Mexico, and then the stormwater. And I still try to apply some of that research to now my own personal endeavor of how teams work efficiently. I originally got interested in research through a scholarship advisor of mine when I just told her that I was interested in doing research and that I wasn't totally sure on where to start and how to get into that. So she kind of adopted me into one of her teams and helped me get a research position. And so that's kind of how I got into research initially. And then I'd say the single largest piece of advice that I can give someone trying to get into research is to get involved in any of the research symposiums. Like Augusta was saying, murals is an excellent opportunity where you can reach out to one of your professors and let them know that you're interested in participating in one of the symposiums. And most of the time, they'll be more than eager to adopt you into one of their interests so that you can present that at one of the symposiums, or they'll at least direct you to another professor who is willing to take on that task. Thank you.
Thanks, Reed. And now I invite folks to ask Reed a few questions, either through the chat box or unmute yourself if you're comfortable.
We also have some questions in the chat from folks who posed them earlier. So for students in the Rive, you can take a look at the chat or you can post them in here or unmute yourself.
Should I answer some of the questions in the chat? Is that okay? I would say, just to answer what was the best thing that I learned or obtained through my research, it would actually be that I don't like research and that I am not a scientist or someone that would like to be highly involved in science. And I think it was one of the single most important things I've encountered in my academic career is just realizing that I didn't want to go down this path. And it's really helped shape the opportunities and the direction I'd like to go in further in life. But it also has really helped me become a more nitpicky person and get down to fine details and conduct good science when I need to. So I would say that is the greatest thing I've gotten out of any of my research, and that I have more of a passion and love for creating or engineering systems than I am researching them. I can keep going too. I don't. Nicola,
It looks like you got a question from Alex. What was your research experience in Mexico like?
it was one of the most incredible opportunities I think I've ever had. Just to the team I was working on, if you go back to my slide or remember, it was a really great group of people that I'm not usually or don't often get the encounter to work with, like here at CSU. So just the cultural differences was really amazing. Learning how to communicate and work with people that don't even speak English was such a challenge, and I love it. And that's where my passion for teamwork has come from, drawn from that experience. But it was also really eye-opening to see how your research affects the community. So we were able to conclude that the disease we were analyzing, T. gondii, or Toxoplasmosis T. gondii, was having a significant impact on the immunocompromised community and the infant community in Merida, Mexico, and that there should effectively be some sort of policy to protect those people. So not that I was a part of the policy decision, but that our workings as researchers was going to go into effect in the world in some way greater than ourselves. Thanks, Alex. That was a great question.
Thanks for answering those questions. I think we're good to go to move on to our next panelist to answer these first 4 questions. So Miguel, I invite you to start speaking to these when you're ready.
Yeah. So do I answer all of them? Is that what's going?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah. So the type of research that I did when I was at CSU, I did two projects. So I helped develop an augmented reality mobile application to serve as a virtual tour for the Richardson Design Center. They were trying to like analyze where students spend most of their time. So, and they wanted to actually know, depending on like their level. So if it's a freshman, sophomore, a junior or senior, they were trying to analyze that. So I was helping with the application. And my favorite project, and one that I also presented for murals, was developing an application for the HTC Vive, so like a VR headset to work with the robot to communicate in a virtual environment. So this one was intended to serve as a little robot, just to go out and be deployed as opposed to a human to that, like if in a disaster zone. So it was really fun. It was really interesting working with a hardware and then a virtual component. And then how did I get involved with this project? So I started as a research volunteer, working on my own project. So the robot was my own project. I saw a video of this person connecting a robot with the Microsoft HoloLens. So it's an augmented reality headset. And I wanted to replicate that. And I think, how I got with the mobile application. I was a volunteer, but later on there was an opportunity that opened up, and I had background in VR and AR. So I joined the little team of artists to help develop this app. When and how did you get involved in research initially? So I found out about the lab that I worked for through the AR VR club. A friend that was an officer was already part of the lab, and I mentioned to him if that I wanted to do that I was interested in research. So he suggested to reach out to Dr. Ortega, who was the one in charge of the lab. So that same day, he was super excited. He suggested some projects that I could work for, but I kind of wanted to do my own thing. Like I said, I found that video, and he provided the resources, and I kind of started off that way. And an advice that I would give, I'd say just get involved. Yeah, like Reed said, a lot of professors do research. So I have took some classes with Dr. Ortega, and like I said, he has the VR lab or mixed reality. That's what he calls it. Also look for opportunities outside your field. That lab also had a lot of artists, which is interesting. So yeah, don't limit yourself to your own domain or field. I'd say reach out and find an opportunity.
Thank you, Miguel. And now I invite folks to unmute themselves to ask a few questions to Miguel or put it in the chat box. I'm trying to scroll through the previous ones to try to find one too. Okay, we have one from Alex. What goals do you have for your research moving forward?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I'm no longer a student, so I don't have access to these really cool VR equipment. But I know I still have the original code for a lot of the stuff that I did. That I know it could be repurposed to like work on a phone, like augmented. So like if you guys have played, like Pokemon Go has an augmented feature. There's a few other games. So maybe like making it open source, just the code itself. Since I don't see myself like going back to school, or maybe I don't know. But yeah, maybe open sourcing that project.
If you could, Miguel, Matthew asked this question, and I think it would be cool if you could answer it. It says, was there a learning curve to get started with your research?
Yeah. I was very new to like VR. So you're actually manipulating these 3D models, and a lot of times there's a lot of debugging when it comes to like placing something, and then you write a script or write something how you want the object to interact. So there was a lot of there was a big learning curve, but like I said, Dr. Ortega was really good with providing us resources like books that he knew, and having like a shared account for what's that, Udemy. So if you were struggling with something, you could go and watch a video there, and there was a lot of people in the lab that were very helpful, that knew a lot. So yeah.
Awesome. And I'm going to wait a few seconds just in case anybody has a question they thought of for you. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Miguel. I'm going to pass it to Augusta next to walk through answering the first 4 bullet questions.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm currently not working on any research as well, just graduated. The one that I did work on in the past that I think I'm most proud of within my undergraduate career was modeling gentrification rates in cities throughout the United States. I ended up getting involved with that project because I was talking to my advisor and she suggested I do research, but I didn't really have any interest in the ones that were strictly computer science. I think computer science is cool, but I think it's even cooler when you add it to something that's more social, that's something outside of computer science. And I really kind of cared about like social issues and things of that nature and like what impacts my communities and how to kind of problem solve in that area. So I kind of told her about the like my interest in that field, and she said you should probably do murals. And I was just like, I don't really know anything about research. I know it's a lot of writing, and what if it's boring? And so she said, murals is a way you go in there and you kind of see all the different types of ways research kind of appears depending on the subject that you're doing. I mean, I've seen people do research about like hair and like your teeth and where around the world, what's culturally appropriate and things of that nature. And I thought that was pretty cool because it's what interested those people. So I told my advisor, she recommended me to a statistics professor, and I ended up taking an additional class in order to like make sure that my research matched and I was able to explain what was happening in my research. One piece of advice that I would give to people in a pursuit of a research opportunity is to kind of tell everyone what you're interested in, right? At the end of the day, I think the only reason I kind of got that was because I would ask people, well, this is what I'm interested in and I don't see it. And then when the opportunity arose, somebody was like, hey, Augusta, you said you're interested in so-and-so. I know somebody who's also interested in this. I'm going to pair you with them. You get to work with that person. And it was pretty cool to see that they love statistics enough to see how it was applied in areas of like criminal justice, gentrification, things that I was interested in as well. And so that kind of sparked this passion inside me.
Thank you, Augusta. And now I invite folks to ask Augusta a few questions. We have one from Uche, and it is, how did you go about modeling with regards to statistics, gentrification in the community you looked at?
Okay, so, oh my gosh, it's been a long time since I have my statistics knowledge, but basically I use census data. And so we kind of looked at 2 periods. And so the mindset was that I knew that this census was coming up. And so ideally I would have this to be my benchmark of how close was I based off of my model. And so I kind of put it in the jump, and basically I couldn't use all of the characteristics that the census collects on people, which is actually a ton of information. So I kind of highlighted some of like the age, your race, how much you make, what industry you're in. And that kind of gave the different weights of like what was, I won't say crucial, but like what was a huge factor in determining if areas are gentrifying, whether it's like an increase of people with a college degree, an increased people in this age or this race. And that was kind of how we modeled the gentrification rates.
Thank you for that question. Any other questions for Augusta? I also have one that you kind of touched on already, so feel free to reiterate or elaborate, but what were some of your favorite parts of your research experience?
I would say learning about research. Initially, I was against research and I just thought it wasn't for me. So I was learning what research looked like and that I could do research that isn't specifically computer science, but that does utilize like a technical skill, as well as my public speaking. I know I'm not the best at that, but I realize that I come alive when I'm talking about a subject that I'm passionate about. So that was really cool to see like throughout the experience.
Thank you for answering that. And we have another question. How do you hope to build on your project?
So one of the feedback that I got from murals that I kind of keep with me is that it's not enough to just have the data and explain the data to other people, no matter how well you explain it. And so you also need to have the qualitative, so like the stories about people in those communities or people who used to live in those communities and where they are now. And so my next step is maybe going to grad school in a few years, taking a break, been in school too long, but to learn how to put the quantitative data with the qualitative data and make an impact in terms of, hey, let's figure out how gentrification could just benefit the people already in that community versus pushing them out and having somebody else benefit from gentrification.
Thank you for answering that. Is there any last questions for Augusta before we move on to our final panelist? Okay, awesome. Now I'd like to invite our final panelist, Uche, to speak to the 4 bolded questions, and feel free to start when you're ready.
All right. So the current research that I'm working on right now, it's again, sort of what I talked about earlier. It's looking at how we can apply these really complex lattice structures to specifically aerospace components to basically reduce their weight, but also at the same time make sure that they're able to withstand any given loading that they might be experiencing. In the past and during my master's, I worked on specific like aerospace related brackets that we were examining, and then now I've shifted towards spacecraft components and trying to see, like, again, applying lattice structures to reduce their weight, but specifically with the component I'm looking at now, it's essentially a component that's able to connect, whether it be a satellite or some type of payload, to essentially the propulsion systems of the launch stack. And the idea is that within the gaps of the lattice, we'd be able to fill it with some type of propellant that could then be used for the satellite when it's in orbit. And so I've just been doing a lot of analysis with that. And the goal is to hopefully have it additively manufactured through metal 3D printing. And so when I first got involved with research, it was during my undergrad as a junior, I believe. I was interested. I was always interested in it. I just never got the chance to actually go about it. So eventually I talked to this one professor who always said, if you want something to do and you're looking for research, just let me know and I can put you on a project. And so I reached out to him and I told him my interest with regards to the aerospace industry. And so I was able to work on this like satellite project that he had going on, where we would examine like data that we would receive from satellites that our school would operate. And so that was really cool. Didn't really like it that much though, just because it was very, I guess, computational and coding based and not very hands-on. But again, good experience. And I think it definitely connected me with industry and set me up for the current work that I'm doing now. And how did I get in? So yeah, I think that sort of answers how I got into research initially. And then I think what the last, so one piece of advice you'd give. Yeah, so I think one piece of advice I'd give, I think be confident in yourself and really know what you want to look into. I think the combination of those two really helps drive you in whatever type of research that you want to do. I think if you're honest with your professor and you let him know, like, hey, this is what I'm interested in, I just know I'll need the support that's needed to actually go about performing the research, and just being honest with them, but also still being confident in the type of work you can do. I think that's really important and has led me up to now, I would say. So yeah.
Thanks, Uche. And now I invite folks to ask Uche a few questions.
Do you want me to answer one of the older questions?
Yeah.
I could try that. Oh, I can. I just saw that. Okay. Yes, they definitely did. I think it's actually interesting. So through my research and also the people I've talked to and through my connections Eventually, I was able to go to a NSBE conference, and when I went to the NSBE conference, Carnegie Mellon University was interviewing for students to either be a PhD student or a master's student. And at the time, I didn't see myself being a PhD student, so I interviewed to be a master's student. I wasn't sure if I would actually get in, because essentially they'd interview you, and and if they liked you, they would basically admit you. And so I didn't know too much about it, and I didn't know how cool the school Carnegie Mellon was, but I interviewed anyway, and it worked out, and I got in. And I was only able to get that opportunity through NSBE. So I think NSBE had a really great impact. And I think also just the connections I made with regards to the aerospace industry within NSBE, I think gave me a better idea of how I wanted to align my research as well.
I have a question, but I'm trying to like form it as I like say it, so bear with me.
Okay.
Did you ever experience like moments of being intimidated or self-doubt while you were getting involved with research? And if you did, how did you navigate that and process through?
Yeah, I felt that consistently. I think but in undergrad, during my master's, and even still during my PhD, I think it's a consistent thing that you'll go through. And when thinking about how I got through it, or I guess how I was able to get through it, you have to think about where the core usually came from. So in undergrad, it was usually looking at other students and seeing the type of work that they're doing, and maybe self-consciously like comparing yourself to them. And I think with research, some people I think everyone's on their own timeline, right? So some people will make progress during, I don't know, a couple months or a couple weeks, and then you might be stuck on something, and then maybe some weeks you'll make a lot of progress, and then they'll be stuck. But often you just focus on yourself, and you'll think about how behind you are, and maybe the skills that you don't know. And so because of that, that's usually where it came from for me. And so when knowing that was the case, I just had to either read more stuff, read more papers, take more of the time to actually like learn the material that I needed to continue or to advance with my research. And that was a consistent thing even in Carnegie Mellon. I think it rooted from not knowing things or comparing yourself to other students, but just being sure that you're able to just know that you just need to put in more time to actually do the research and learn the material. And then I see another question. Yes. Yeah, that's a good question. So initially, the work I was doing with like the jet engine bracket and other aerospace brackets, that was sort of my own thing that I came up with when I first came to Carnegie Mellon. But through that research, I was able to show people like, oh, okay, yeah, this is what our lab is able to do, and this is the type of work I'm doing. And so through that, I was able to then reach out to they're called the Aerospace Corporation. They're centered in El Segundo, California, basically in LA. And so they're like a federally funded research development center, FFRDC. They're essentially like a national lab, but for the space industry. And so I work with them on 2 of our different projects. And that's been a really great experience, just because that's a whole other community that just provides you resources and also knowledge and support to engage and advance your research. So.
Awesome. Thank you for answering those questions. We're going to open it up to all the panelists for questions, but before I do that, I just wanted to do like a brief like recap of like some major things that I've heard, because I've been hearing some like lots of great consistency, and I want to make sure that's captured. A lot of our panelists have like just put themselves out there and immersed themselves in a research experience. I heard a lot of engaging with research symposiums. I'm getting connected with research opportunities either through a student organization or just reaching out to a professor, which that is awesome to hear. I've heard a little bit about that it's okay to do research that's not in your field. That is a completely valid experience to have. Um, I think those are like the main ones that I've been like hearing and what's been resonating with me. Deanna, have you heard like consistent things from the panelists as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, I know that Augusta said something that really stood out to me that I think I've heard just like in like a lot of student conversations who are wanting to do research is like talking to everyone that you know about your interest, even if you're not sure what that looks like in research, um, just so that there are connections are being made informally, formally, and it's just getting comfortable with the idea of talking about it. And I think that that's really where I've seen a lot of connections with kind of some student conversations that I've had. So that really stood out to me. Um, and then I think a lot of folks also shared that um, um, that was my train of thought. I lost it. No, but I think that that was the main thing that really stood out to me.
Thank you, Deanna. So I invite folks now to ask questions to any of our panelists. Feel free to unmute yourselves or put it in the chat box and I'll read it out loud.
For folks who are at CSU or were at CSU, did you ever attend murals as like a non-participant? Like when did you attend, when you attended as like just as an observer? Yeah, just a little bit about murals since I know that that's happening this semester in the spring for our RIFE students to know a little bit more about.
I would say that I never really attended murals as a non-participant, but me and my friends always hung out in the LSC. So we saw it going on, but we were like, oh no, we're not going to participate or like go in. So that's kind of about my experience as like a non-participant.
Thanks, Augusta. Would anybody else like to add to the question that Deanna posed?
Yeah, I also didn't. I as an observer, I didn't participate. It was just murals. When I participated in murals, it was through presenting my poster. I knew about it when I transferred in to CSU, but at the time I didn't have enough research to really, you know, make a poster out of it or explain my research. So I knew about it, but I didn't join it until the year after.
Thank you for answering. I have a few questions from students that posted on our pre-activity before the panel. One of them is, are research opportunities paid or unpaid experiences? And anybody can answer this one.
I guess I'll take a stab at this one. So obviously I didn't go to CSU, but based on my experience and just with universities and things like that, usually as an undergrad, you typically don't get paid for your research unless you do it over the summer. I think during then, because I'll just be like kind of as maybe a summer research internship in a way. There also are cases though that it might count for credit. That's what I sort of did during my master's. It counted for units. But yeah, I think for the most part, you typically don't get paid. It usually, especially as maybe a master's or undergrad student, it'll usually either count for just units. But if you're doing it over the summer, then yeah, that's a different story. I could definitely see that you getting paid.
Thanks for answering that. And we have another question in the chat, unless somebody else wants to speak to the question that I posed of are research opportunities paid or unpaid?
I guess I could talk about murals. One of the reasons I did murals was also to learn about research, but also to win. You get money if you win. So I was like, oh my gosh, that'd be great if I just had this extra cash, especially people in like first place and stuff. It's really cool. It's pretty fun to compete. I played sports all throughout high school. So I was like, I need to figure out an avenue to like feed the competitive side of myself. But you get paid in that aspect. And I think you also get to make the connections because professors kind of come in on their own free will to come and see what projects you're working on. And when I participated in murals in 2019, I had one professor who was interested in the work that I did, thought it was really cool. And I wanted to figure out how I could get into like policy and like the data piece of public policy. She didn't know how to do that, but she did put me in touch with someone who did. So I kind of asked my questions, and then that's like a connection that I do have. And then, yeah, I won't answer the second question. I don't have an answer for that yet.
Thank you, Gusta, for answering that. And then our next question from Alex is, which research skills do you hope to / have utilized in other ways in your lives? And anybody can take this question on.
I can go ahead and answer this one. So there's a tremendous amount of technical skills that you'll learn doing research that are super valuable, but are kind of unique to research. But a lot of the time, for at least what I encountered and experienced was that I learned a lot of soft skills like public speaking and learning to communicate with other groups of people, and just your ability to communicate really advances through research, as your whole purpose is to show what you have learned to the rest of the world, pretty much. So I'd hope to be able to utilize those in my future career, hopefully as an engineer. Just being able to communicate with whoever I want effectively, I think is going to be a really valuable skill for me. And I think many of the other researchers will agree that that's one of the things they've gotten.
Thank you, Reed. And I invite anybody else who would like to answer this question.
Yeah, I think just adding to that, I completely agree. I think when doing research, and obviously you'll learn a lot of technical skills, as Reed said, and you'll learn a lot about like different types of software, just like other mini things just to get you through your work. But I think the amount of soft skills that you pick up is really interesting. I think for one, for example, from your murals, it seems like you guys do like some type of presentation or poster session. And so that really helps with just being sure to be able to talk about your research to a given group of people. But then at the same time, you're also developing skills to understand, okay, based on the group of people, this is the level of research, or this is the level of detail I need to add to how I want to describe my work. And at the same time, you're also learning how to work and discuss technical things in the correct manner. And I think when working with the industry partner that we have for my work, I'm always giving them updates, and so it's like a continuous thing, and eventually you just get used to it. So it makes you more used to talking to people and just discussing your technical ideas with others.
Thank you all for answering that question. And let's do one final question. So I invite anybody to ask a final question for the evening for our panelists.
Do any of our arrived students who are here want to ask a final question?
They might be shy. I'm just like, y'all shy? Don't be shy. I'm trying to scroll through and see if there's like a question. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you, Jason. Well, if nobody has any questions, I definitely will not try to like pull teeth and get more questions. We did go through a lot of them. So thank you, panelists, so much for being here and interacting with our students and answering like a laundry list of questions. I know it's definitely going to be helpful for our students that are here today, as well as those that interact with our recording. So thank you. And to close this out, I just want to go through reminders for this week and next week. So for this week, there's 2 seminars that's happening. Our first joint mental health one happens this morning at 10 a.m. The next one is this Wednesday from 3 to 4 p.m. And we're actually going to have a guest speaker, Annam John from the CSU Health Center, have a facilitated discussion to go over talking about mental health. The pre-activity is just posing some questions. Um, oops. Posing some questions for Adam John to talk through. There is a post activity different from the discussion board, which is a self-care Padlet. So it'll help you walk through what self-care looks like for you and what it means for you. So hopefully it's a little bit of a change in pace of like activities for the seminar, as well as just everything you have to do with all of your courses. And then there will be a discussion board as usual. It's due at Friday at 11:59 p.m. For the research panel that's happening today. If you have any other questions or if you just want to pose additional questions, please do so at the pre-activity discussion board. And then there's the usual post-discussion board that's due on Friday as well at 11:59 p.m. And as usual, there's drop-in hours this week. So definitely utilize your STEM peer mentors as you see fit. They're here to help you as you need. And then next week is going to also be another seminar. So it gets a little bit spicy since spring break isn't here like it normally is. So there will be another seminar next Monday, same time. It'll be facilitated and hosted by one of our Career Center liaisons, Madigan. She's going to walk us through and talk about your strengths results, your top 5 results, and how does that connect with your STEM identity, STEM goals, STEM industry goals, graduate school goals, everything STEM in regards to just pulling out and leveraging those strengths that you learn about yourself within taking the strengths quest. You should have received an email from Fabiola, the AEC director, with your strengths code to take that assessment. That is part of the pre-activity, is taking that assessment, and then you'll want to upload your top 5 results that you get from that assessment. If you have any trouble with finding that email from Fabiola, or it's prompting you to pay for that assessment, please let me or Deanna know as soon as possible so we can help you get access to that assessment, because you should not have to pay. And the last part for that pre-activity is just to skim through an article called Strengths So White. It'll give you a perspective of how the Strengths Quest was created from a white identity lens and how that plays into taking the Strengths Quest. Don't read it very thoroughly, just skim over what you have capacity to, because it is a pretty thorough article, and Madigan will be talking about those pieces as well if you're not able to get through it and skim it. There will be a post discussion board as well. Oh, that's the wrong due date. I'm sorry. I think next Friday is April 1st. Just want us to do April 1st or 2nd. And STEM family groups will be next week as well. And the last thing, I know it's a lot of reminders, is I just wanted to validate that y'all are going through a lot of Zoom fatigue. So continue to hang in there as best as you can. We do have a lot of guest presenters for the remaining seminars, so I want to validate being worn out with Zoom. And I also want to recognize that we have a lot of great people that wants to interact with you. So please, if you have capacity and energy, definitely continue to engage with the live sessions. And that is everything I have. Thank you again to the panelists, and thank you to our participants for hanging out with us today. Me, Diana, and Alex will be hanging back if you have any questions, but have a good rest of your evening.